Evening, everyone. Call to session. Call to order this session of the Tacoma Park City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kovar. Councilmember Dabala. Councilmember Kostick. Councilmember Siemens. Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Searcy. Councilmember Kovar.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. On our agenda this evening, I don't think we have any changes tonight. To that, our upcoming agenda, next Wednesday, February 20th, we'll have our regularly scheduled meeting at 7:30 here. We'll have the voting session. It'll be the second reading ordinance approving the FY 2019 budget amendment number 3. We have 2 work sessions next week, an update from the Youth Council and discussion of revisions to the Youth Council Charter and a discussion of committee appointments. And then at the end of the public meeting, we will go into an administrative functions session for the City Council to talk to the City Manager as a follow-up to her evaluation earlier this year. And then on Wednesday, February 27th, we have a voting session. We have a resolution adopting the amended Youth Council Charter, resolution providing for appointments to committees, and a resolution authorizing the closure of Ann Street for Tacoma Langley CDA Springfest. Our work sessions that night will be a discussion of council priorities and a work session on the banning of plastic straws in the community. On Wednesday, March 6th, our regular meeting will be here at 7:30. We have scheduled so far a presentation on the report of the resident survey and our police department annual report. Likely something else will be added to that March 6th meeting. And then on March 13th, that night we'll have a report from the Youth Council. That night will be a public hearing on the ban on plastic straws. Our voting session that evening will be a resolution adopting the FY 2020 Green Team priorities and a resolution adopting the FY 2020 Council priorities. Our work session that night will be on economic development. And so that are our upcoming meetings. And I don't think we actually have an adoption of minutes tonight, right? Okay. So right now we'll have public comments on voting items. We have 3 items tonight. The first is a first reading ordinance approving the FY 2019 budget amendment number 3. And I realize what's weird. The microphone is different. They switched the mic. I was like, what? It's really different tonight. I used to have one of the short ones. Okay. It was weirding me out a little bit. I didn't know what was different. All right. Any public comments on the first reading ordinance approving the FY 2019 budget amendment number 3? Seeing none, then the next voting item is a resolution amending Resolution 2018-63 regarding the Montgomery College Math and Science Building to clarify that no change in the width of the Fenton Street right-of-way is needed by the city. Any comments on that? The third voting item is a resolution opposing the widening of the Capitol Beltway. Any public comments on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll now go to any other public comments on other issues. And Mr. Lovelace, we will get you the microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Arthur. The microphone is really like messing me up tonight. You changed something on me, and it's like, we'll let Mr. Lovelace go first, and then we'll go back to our voting session. Thank you.
Hello, this is Pat Lovelace, your official peace delegate. And I want to ask you people about having some warming stations and some hygiene stations, sober stations for the homeless people and the alcoholics and drug addicts on the street. Because we're having a nasty, nasty winter. And with the climate change, it's only going to get worse. And because we continue burning fossil fuels. I'd like to see a place set up where the homeless can get clean clothes, can get to do their laundry, and can get to take a shower and a bath, shave, and also to get out of the cold and be checked over for any hypothermic injuries such as frostbite or frostbite nip or whatever you call it. And there's absolutely no excuse in this richest country in the world that we have to have homeless people out in wind chills below 0. Absolutely no excuse for it in the richest country in the world. And tell Trump he can take his wall and shove it. We need to set up places for the homeless and the poor people in this country. We got to be a free country. I'm not free as long as the homeless aren't free. I'm not free as long as people are dying on the streets of hunger or addiction. We need to have places set up where we can get help, and maybe Tacoma Park can lead the way on that. And also, I want to wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day. And please, for God's sake, think about your homeless people on this holiday. Valentine's Day is supposed to be a day of love, and remember, they need love too, just as much as me or you, if not more. And also, I just want to thank a few people for helping me out. I want to thank Doris Thompson and Keisha Johnson for helping me out. They're my healthcare workers I have at home on nursing duty. They helped me with my medication. They helped me. They did this braid in my hair. Keisha did this today. And I want to thank her for that. And I also want to thank Nora Reno, who's going to be helping me get to meetings when she can. She's a new person that's helping me out. I met her down at a demonstration down at the Catharsis on the Mall. So again, if you're active in the community is going to be active with you. You'll meet new people. You'll meet good, honest people, friends who will stick with you. There's a lot in the world out there for them, even for me in my condition. I still have friends. All my friends I have now are the ones I met in the peace movement. So please, work for peace, and peace will work for you. Don't forget that. I still carry the peace sign when I can at the demonstrations. Thank you very much. Don't forget the homeless. Please, no.
Thank you, Mr. Lovelace. All right, now we'll go back to our actual agenda items and deal with our voting session. The first item tonight is the first reading ordinance approving the FY 2019 budget amendment number 3.
So we have a revised document in the orange, and it's simply that we had characterized some funds from the general fund and some from the special revenue fund, and we got them mixed up. So this actually corrects them. Doesn't change the numbers or the impact. It just correctly describes them as if they're in the general fund or the special revenue fund.
Okay, great.
They're the ones that are underlined in the document, primarily related to Ethan Allen and Flower Avenue. Thank you.
Great. Would someone like to move the ordinance? Councilwoman Searcy, do I have a second? Councilmember Siemens, any discussion or questions? All right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Your mic.
So in looking at this quickly, the very last one, Flower Avenue, Green Street, is that a bigger number?
There's not
Than what we
different,
had
there's,
last
no, it's just how it's characterized, if it's from the general fund or the grants, whether it's a revenue or an expenditure from the special revenue funds. And it's confusing because it involves WSSC, how WSSC is described. I can
Okay.
get a full paragraph to you
I get it.
in
I get
between the
it.
first and second readings, but unfortunately, I did not get that to you today.
And the others are all the same. Okay, great, thank you.
Great. Councilmember Kovar.
Yes, I think with the changes that you made, it makes slightly more sense to me than it did before, and that may have been my own misreading of it. But so most of these are just because staff, there were delays in staff hirings, and in some cases it was a delay in the project moving forward.
That's right.
Are any of these new money that wasn't previously appropriated, where something's gone higher? Because the way it was structured before, it had that look, and I think
There was, there's only a couple, there's $4,000 increase for computers for the intern
Right.
positions. And I think that's it.
But the Ethan Allen one, for example, that's just, is that new money, or is that,
No, it's simply finishing off the project.
right, okay, that hadn't been expected to come out of this budget, is that?
Right, I mean, sometimes it depends on which where we thought it was going to be in the fiscal
Yeah,
year and how
okay.
it was actually
But it's the
allocated.
same total amount for the overall
That's my
project cost.
understanding, it's
Yeah.
the same.
Okay.
I will confirm it, but
Okay.
that's my understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, seeing no other questions, all those in favor of the ordinance approving FY 2019 budget amendment number 3, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay. Next voting item is a resolution amending Resolution 2018-63 to clarify that no change in the width of the Fenton Street right-of-way is needed by the city. Would someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Kovar, do I have a second? Councilwoman Costick? I don't believe there's any changes from our work session on this.
That's correct.
Any discussion or questions?
One question.
Mhm.
So we emailed about this, and maybe the city
Yes.
manager could just respond. So this doesn't in any way impinge on the city's control of the existing Fenton Street, and
That's right.
if there were any plans to temporarily block it for some purpose, that has to be approved by us. Not that, I don't think that there is such a plan, but we retain control of this, and that's not in any way the purpose or the function of this. Is that accurate?
That's right. This is city right-of-way. It'll remain city right-of-way with all of our control of that. If there was a decision never to widen it, we would have control over that widened
Right.
part. But
Okay.
yes, no change.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, next is the resolution opposing the widening of the Capitol Beltway. Would someone first, I want to say thank you to Councilwoman Costick for putting this together so quickly. We did discuss this last week at our legislative update and wanted to get this on our agenda and voting on it quickly so that we could take a position on a number of bills in Annapolis. So I just want to thank Councilmember Costick for pulling this together. I know there may be a number of amendments. Before we discuss those, would someone like to move the resolution? Councilwoman Costick moves. Do I have a second? Second. Councilmember Seaman, second. Any amendments someone would like to put forward or discussion of this? Councilwoman Damala.
Yes, I'd like to put 3 amendments forward. These are the ones that were in the emails that we were circulating earlier yesterday. But the public hasn't had a chance to weigh in on them, so one is a new fourth whereas, which expands on the idea of if you increase roadway capacity, research shows that you increase traffic, you attract drivers, you increase traffic, and you fail in the long run to improve congestion. There's a great deal of research on this. So I would like to capture that in an amendment, in a whereas that says, whereas research has shown that induced demand refers to the idea that increasing roadway capacity often encourages more drivers and thus failing to improve congestion. So I think that's a point that strengthens this. A second point that some of us talked about online was to point out that tolls are regressive forms of taxation. And so to add in the next to last whereas, just a new one, whereas tolls are regressive. Do you want to do 3 at once?
I think maybe we do,
One at a
just
time?
one at a time. It
Okay,
might be easier for
so-
people to keep. Can you
okay,
just
so-
read the first whereas clause again, just to make sure the city clerk was able to get that?
Okay, it's
Yeah.
the same thing that was.
You got it?
So
where-
increasing roadway capacity attracts more,
Often encourages more
Ah.
drivers,
often encourage.
thus failing to improve congestion. Research has shown that.
Okay. Do I have a second for that amendment?
Second.
I don't think you can second it because
I
you
can't
put
'cause I-
forward, you
okay,
motion,
fine.
you put forward, sorry. Councilmember Go. All right, any discussion of the amendment? All right, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, next amendment.
Okay, in recognition of the fact that tolls are regressive forms of taxation, so a new whereas, second to last, whereas tolls are regressive forms of taxation that hurt low-income residents in the same way it affects their more affluent neighbors. So just another point as to,
That do not hurt, or, I think
Mm.
Why
there's
do
a
you,
word.
missing
why
that
would you
part
put
at
the
the end.
affluent parts in? I mean, that's,
whereas tolls are regressive forms of taxation that hurt low-income residents in the same way that they affect more affluent neighbors.
I don't think that makes
That
sense.
the-
I would drop the part, I'm sorry. I would
That-
suggest dropping the part about the affluent neighbors
Okay, so
because-
that disproportionately hurt,
Yes,
okay,
Yeah.
that disproportionately hurt low-income residents.
I think that's right.
So that's a,
Can we say
you're
that,
not arguing the point, you're
can you
fixing
just,
the
sorry, could
grammar.
you just,
Thank you.
whereas tolls are regressive,
Whereas tolls are regressive forms of taxation that hurt low-income.
That disproportionately hurt-
disproportionately affect low-income residents.
yeah, I like the effect versus hurt. The hurt sounded odd to me.
okay.
Yeah.
Whereas tolls are regressive forms of taxation that disproportionately affect low-income residents.
Yeah,
Right.
that works, yes, much better. Do I have a second for that amendment?
Second?
Councilmember Kovar, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, next.
Okay, and then, because when I read this, I know, but it isn't written down why we are doing this now. We're doing this now because there is state legislation concerning the proposed Capital Beltway project that the city believes it's important to comment on in this legislative session. To do that, we need a resolution stating our position. So I would like to add a whereas that reflects why we're doing this. And it would say, whereas state legislation concerning the proposed Capital Beltway project has been introduced, and the city council believes it's important to comment on this proposed legislation. And I can just hand this over to you all.
All right, I have a second for that amendment?
I'll
can't do
second the
it. All right,
amendment.
Councilmember
And I just assume it would be like the second whereas clause, because the first one says
Yeah.
this plan
a
exists.
great place to
The
put it.
second one says there's state legislation, that's why we
Yeah.
want to comment. Is that?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, all those in favor of the additional whereas clause, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you for your patience
thank
with
you.
me.
All right, any other, Councilwoman Costick, did you have something else?
Oh, I think Councilmember DeBala already got the ones that I was going to note from our email
Okay.
conversation. So yeah, thank you to everyone for taking a look at this and proposing those.
All right, any other discussion or comments? All right, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay. That does it for our voting session this evening. Councilwoman Costick, is there any other legislative items that?
Yes, I have a couple things to update people on. The city submitted testimony on a couple of bills in the last week or so. One was HB 285, which is a repeal of limitation on taxing small hotels. And this is a bill that would enable but not require municipalities to assess a local hotel tax on hotels with 10 or fewer homes, or 10 or fewer rooms. Current law currently allows counties to do this, but does not allow cities to do this. So the city submitted testimony supporting the bill, which would allow us and give us that option to tax smaller hotels as well. We also submitted testimony supporting HB 313, state income and property tax credits for the Purple Line construction. And we submitted testimony opposing HB 600, renewable energy portfolio standard tier 1 renewable source nuclear energy. And this is a bill that would allow nuclear energy to be considered renewable energy in the state's portfolio. So we submitted testimony in line with our previous stance on nuclear energy and nuclear things in general, opposing that. And we had a discussion this morning with our state advocate and discussed a large number of new bills that have come in, and staff will be taking a look at several of those and providing some thoughts on how those might potentially impact the city one way or another. And there will probably be a number of additional testimonies submitted in the next week or so.
Thank you. All right, now we will have other public comments this evening. Did you have something else?
I wanted to add that I think one testimony that we agreed upon but isn't written yet is the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which is important to a large number of people in this community.
Great. All right, any other public comments tonight? Not seeing any other public comments, we'll move on to council comments. Any council comments? Councilmember Siemens.
Thank you, Mayor. First, my wife asked that I thank the community for all the support that they gave to Adventist Community Services during the recent federal government furlough. The community really responded and provided food and monetary donations to Adventist Community Services. They have had several pop-ups at the center where they distributed food and other assistance to the employees and contractors who were affected by the furlough. She is featured on the cover of the new flyer from Adventist Community Services, and they're reaching out to the community for continuing support. Hopefully will be no more furloughs, but there still are many people who are needy in the community. Additionally, I wanted to just mention that I get frustrated sometimes when I hear people talking about global warming, and I hear the political debate over, is this global warming real or isn't it? And I've grown to realize that all they're talking about is they're debating what is the cause of global warming. I don't think anyone is denying the fact that global warming is real, that the Earth is getting warmer and that the water levels are increasing and going to be affecting all of our communities that are near the water, and affecting some communities that are not so near the water, like Tacoma Park. As we met with department heads tonight and talked about priorities moving forward, I was struck by a couple of departments that are already talking about concerns about water here within this building and within our municipal complex. And I encourage my colleagues on the council to continue our leadership role in the country by considering that global warming is going to impact us. It's going to impact the city and our municipal center. And I think that we should start at this point in time thinking about the future and how we might, steps we might take to mitigate future problems that we face here at the center. With that, I will yield the rest of my time.
Councilmember Costick.
Thank you. I have a number of updates. First of all, excitingly, we have a date and a time for the B.F. Gilbert Neighborhood Association meeting. We are going to be meeting on March 26th at 7:30 p.m. in the fire station in the room on the lower level. So I'll be working with residents who live in that area and kind of the people who have historically been involved with the association, and we'll work together to get the information out, create some flyers, and spread the word. But I hope people will put that on their calendars and plan to attend. On Monday night, I had a chance to attend a discussion related to the county's Vision Zero program that was hosted by the Montgomery County Civic Federation. And it was a really interesting opportunity to learn a little more about some of the pedestrian and bike issues throughout the county and more about what the county is doing. One particular issue that really stuck out for me was the racial equity issue. And there was a statistic that I wanted to share with everyone that the county representatives had found in their research that African American and Latinx residents of Montgomery County are 33% more likely than whites to be killed while traveling in the county. And I think that is just a stark reminder of why it's so important to have this policy in the county. And I really appreciate the fact that it is focusing specifically on equity. And I hope we can build something similar in Tacoma Park and work with the county and the state on these issues. I am meeting along with Director of Public Works Daryl Braithwaite on Friday with DC Councilmember Brandon Todd to discuss the situation on Eastern Avenue and the plans by DDOT to improve the road, which have been delayed by another year, it sounds like, into 2020 or so. And we'll be talking about how we can try to work together on that and hopefully move that project along. Additionally, I want to remind people about something I mentioned a while back, but is coming up soon. There are 2 ninth graders who live in Tacoma Park who are organizing a youth TEDx program, and we'll be sharing information about what they and their fellow students feel about the world in general and sort of issues that are important to them. And this will be here in the community center on March 9th. I just wanted to let people know if they're interested in getting involved or finding out more about it. You can let me know and I'll share some more information, or you can email them directly at tedxyouth.tkpk2018@gmail.com. And then finally, the council sent a letter that the National League of Cities had drafted to our federal representatives, urging them to invest in infrastructure and help out with transportation networks, broadband, utilities, those sorts of things by providing some additional and needed funding. And I wanted to thank Congressman Raskin, who already got back to us and said thank you. He was supportive of that and hopes to see it move forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other comments this evening? Councilmember Kovar?
Thank you. Just wanted to mention 3 things. One, there's been ongoing questions about the PEPCO project, and I think it's okay for me to mention that on the 27th, our council meeting on the 27th, which is 2 weeks from today, we're going to have a representatives of PEPCO here to talk about the status of the project. And of course, that includes portions of Eastern Avenue that run all the way down through the edge of Ward 3 on the border with the district, and then also the part of Eastern Avenue by the Metro station, not to mention Tacoma Avenue and Fenton Street and on into Silver Spring. And so they'll have a presentation on that. And I think we're trying to come up with a way that maybe people will get an opportunity to ask some questions too. Have we
Yeah,
worked
so
that
I
out yet?
think this is, when we discussed, sorry, Councilman Kovar, I'm going to interrupt you. When we discussed our council procedures, we've been having conversations of how to have, during our council meetings, more Q&A conversation with members of the public and exploring different options. One of the things that we talked about when we discussed council procedures is, maybe once a month, trying when we start our meetings, maybe at 6 p.m., having a presentation and then more of a Q&A for the hour and a half before our formal meeting. And we thought, given the PEPCO project and how it is touching many different parts of the city, that having them come in, do a presentation, and then having the opportunity for residents and council members to ask questions, which sort of, we could see how that goes, holding that type of session right before our formal council meeting. And that would also facilitate members of the public asking questions of the representatives from PEPCO. And so we were lucky enough to have the staff got on it right away this afternoon, and PEPCO agreed. And the council had already been scheduled to have a session at 6 p.m. on the 27th to talk to our city attorney, but that's getting moved because we are not getting the report yet from the Legal Services Committee. So I knew your calendars were all free. So just keep them free for the 27th. We'll actually start at 6 p.m. with a session with PEPCO.
Great. Well, thank you, and thanks to the staff for doing that. Just 2 other things I wanted to mention. Tomorrow afternoon at the county planning office is the mandatory referral hearing for the Montgomery College Math Science building, and there's a staff report out from the staff who work at the planning office that will form the basis for the hearing. And one positive thing I'll just mention about that report is that in it, the staff note that, of course, the city council had passed a resolution, and the resolution recommended approval of the application for the building in the context of the mandatory referral process, but with a series of provisions that we had added, the things that we thought were important to have reflected in the project as it went forward. And the county staff said that they support the provisions and use them in their review of the entire project. And so my hope is that I will be able to attend the hearing tomorrow, and still trying to work out the details with my colleagues and the staff to talk just briefly resolution that we passed and the importance of the county planning board taking into account the concerns that we had raised. And then the one last thing I wanted to mention is tomorrow, Thursday, the 14th, from 10 a.m. to noon, I'm doing an office hours, a 2-hour office hour slot at Tacoma Bevco. Anyone from Ward 1 can stop by and ask me about anything. You don't need an appointment. And if you don't say what ward you're from or you're from another ward, I'm not going to turn you away. So 10 to 12 tomorrow. Thank you.
Councilwoman DeBala.
Yeah, 3 things really quickly. We had a great session with department heads earlier this evening, and I wanted to ask when and if the video from that will be posted, because if you want to get a good overview of what the city staff does and you like to watch instead of read, this is a great way to get it covered in a short time. So maybe when that gets up, you can send a link out so we can get it to people. 2 other quick things, just to let you all know, I continue to get lots of calls about stormwater issues on private property. Just FYI, every week, a couple people.
That
Who never-
trees.
Well, less on the trees for me, but the other one I keep getting calls on is primarily from Long Branch Sligo neighborhood, is on the dramatic increase in property tax assessments in that neighborhood. And I would like to remind people, this is the week for most people to file their appeals if they're going to, because you're 45 days from the date of the notice, and for most people that puts it in this week. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Councilwoman Searcy.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm late to the game. Good evening, everyone. One, I want to thank the city manager and the director of public works, as well as Chief Duvall, and being so responsive yesterday to residents in Carroll Highlands, but as well as Hillwood Manor. We're already starting to experience an increase in construction vehicles that are using residential streets in order to access some of the areas that are currently under construction for the Purple Line. So to have staff be so willing to provide a no truck through zone sign at Erskine is going to be really important. And definitely look forward to having continued discussions about how we might be able to implement similar efforts on other residential streets, which will ultimately become through zones for various construction vehicles trying to not have to go through the crossroads in order to access the areas of construction. Also, want to again reiterate my appreciation for staff's responsiveness to different housing issues and the like. We have a growing list for those residents that are currently in queue. Please just be patient with us as we work to try to address some of the sensitive issues that have come to light. And I think, I'm just trying to, my brain, I didn't write it down. I should have written it down. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. I just have a couple of things. Today, I was at the COG board meeting, and I sent to my colleagues and a number of the city staff the link to the meeting and the PowerPoints, because it was a terrific meeting. We had a report on how safe are our roads, looking at the region and safety. We also had a report on managing the region's trees and forests. Tacoma Park received nice praise for our work regarding our tree canopy and our efforts to protect and maintain trees in the city. In the next year, there will be a subcommittee of COG, which over the next 2 years is tasked with looking at the tree canopy in the region, education programs, and developing a model ordinance for tree protection. So we should keep an eye on what they're doing, because it could be interesting. Maybe since we're doing it, they might provide a little assistance and learn something as they're helping other cities and counties in the region. The other thing, they had a panel discussion on addressing the region's capacity for additional housing. As Chuck Bean, the executive director of COG, spoke about last week, COG's been looking at this issue, has identified an actual a deficit of 100,000 housing units that we will need in this region to accommodate people who are moving here. And so that we've tasked the region's housing and planning professionals to come together and think about accessibility, whether or not we can add additional housing, and affordability. And we had the first discussion today, report back from them. So I think that was a very interesting conversation, and the PowerPoint is available for folks to look at. I think that's all I have to report for the moment. We talked about February 27th, so I think I'm going to turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you very much. I wanted to, let's see, there was a comment earlier, about BF Gilbert Community Association or any other community association meetings. Please think of me or department heads to attend these meetings, because it's a really wonderful opportunity for us to learn directly from folks and meet. Sometimes when there's not an immediate complaint, that we can get a lot accomplished and learned in those situations, and I'd love to go. We had thought today would be the day that the NDC plan would become public online at the county level. We've not seen that it has been, but we were told last night it was going to be today. In any event, it may come soon, and if so, I do have information about that in my city manager comments, how to link to that information. Following the county staff's acceptance, they will have a development review committee meeting, so the various staff in the county and in various agencies and utilities will be reviewing the application. They've not started reviewing it yet. That's, once it's public, they begin reviewing it. Then they will come together to discuss it and learn more at a development review committee meeting. Our understanding is that that's tentatively scheduled for March 5th. If things aren't ready, it would be a later meeting. And then that will be a very interesting time to hear back on kind of what's being asked for about the application. My recommendation is after that point that it come to the council for discussion. Obviously, we'll be following along this very closely all through that process, and we do have a staff member on the Development Review Committee when there's an item in Tacoma Park. The council would then make comments that would be submitted before and to the planning board in consideration of the site plan that goes before them. As a reminder, we have the memorandum of agreement in state law that says that the planning board can only override an action of the city council if 4 of the 5 members of the board vote in opposition to the position of the council. So your opinions, other than owning the property, which you can pull anything at any time, other than that, on a development project in Tacoma Park, the council's resolutions carry great weight when there are site plan decisions at the planning board. So that information's on our website. We'll continue to monitor. As soon as we do find out that it's publicly posted, we will be getting information out to people and letting people know and directing people there. Yes, ma'am?
Just to repeat, so I have it clear. So if it goes, if it's accepted tomorrow, which we think which we've been in, okay, hypothetically, it's accepted
hypothetical,
tomorrow.
right.
And then tentatively, it's scheduled for the Development Review Committee agenda on on March 5th, so I have two questions. The first one is, and that's not a decision meeting, that's a get-to-know
That's
the
a,
application meeting?
that's a discussion meeting where staff of the various agencies and utilities sit around, they identify what they found in their review of the plan, questions that they have, requests for additional information, that kind of thing.
And the city staff will participate in that?
That's right. It's
Okay.
not a public, it's not a meeting where you can do public comment, but it is a meeting that you can watch, that a public can attend.
That was going to be my next question. And I actually had a third question. So typically, is there any estimate for how long it might be before the planning board itself? Are we talking weeks, months, years?
It's in the weeks category.
Okay.
And it can be much longer if there's a need for additional information or if there's a request to delay.
So that kind of schedule with the county planning board review, that might get cleared up, say, at the March 5th meeting when folks
We
get
would
a
like,
handle on it.
we will likely, unless there is something that kind of sends something back for a major discussion, they will likely set a tentative date for a planning board meeting around the time of the development review committee. So you get a sense then about when that might eventually come before the planning board. But sometimes they don't. So, I mean.
Not, they set the date around the date of, not that they're going to have the meeting around the date.
Oh, no, no,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
They have to prepare a report.
Right,
They
right.
assemble the information.
Right, that's what I
prepare a
was saying,
report.
that's weeks at least
Yes.
between
Oh, absolutely.
a hypothetical March 5th and the planning board.
That's
It's
correct.
quite a chunk of time there. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It depends on, time is subjective. But yes, it would be a number of weeks, and we'll find out more information as we get closer to that.
Great, thank you. I know there's a lot of interest in the scheduling of this item.
Could I ask, yes, thank you for the information. So, and I may have missed it when you were presenting this, so I apologize for that. To the extent that this council would opine on it again, or take a vote on it, or whatever, when in that sequence do you envision that happening, if it was going to happen?
My recommendation is that that happen after the Development Review Committee meet, so that we can, and it doesn't necessarily have to be wait till their report is final, but an enormous amount of information is assembled and discussed by the time that meeting happens. And so that gives very good information to us to identify if there's some issues that you would want to discuss about a change in where a building line is, or a facade look, or these various things. That's when you would hear what these various issues are, so that then you would have that county information as part of to consider as part of your discussion.
Okay, thank you.
On to another fun subject, cell towers. Cell tower application for 902 Merrimack. So we learned from Montgomery County Tower Committee that the application for the small cell tower installation proposed for 902 Merrimack was once again tabled today. That was at the city's request. This allows us to give some notice to the residents about this, and I'd like to be working with Councilwoman Searcy on this. Installation at this location was first proposed in 2017. The city of Tacoma Park approved increasing the size of the pole at that time. This was a time when a lot of poles were being increased for their PEPCO kind of enhancement projects, so there was a lot of these going through. The cell tower installation request was submitted to the Tower Committee. It was withdrawn. It was sat on until they saw that the federal law was starting to look like it was going to be changed, so that they didn't have to go through the conditional use permit process. Then it came back on their schedule. So this has had a convoluted history. Given that convoluted history and the fact that it was kind of grandfathered in a way before the city council passed an ordinance and all of that work was done, I think the kind of notice would be a little bit different than that we envision would go forward on future cell tower applications in the city's right-of-way. I was on a call last night and again today with folks from the staff, the Tower Committee, and I think that we will be having a seat on the Tower Committee. there was a discussion about how might that work and kind of what would our role be and how does that function. That's still to kind of be worked out because they're changing some of their actions a little bit given the number of applications they're receiving. So we'll keep you posted. Right now, of the pending applications at the Tower Committee, the Merrimack one is the only one that's in the City of Tacoma Parks right-of-way. So that doesn't mean that there aren't other ones in Tacoma Park, but those are on private property and don't come through our process, or they're on state highway right-of-way. And so those are things that, you know, have made it a little bit more difficult. And we're still finding out, I think we've identified who in state highway is responsible for reviewing them, but we're still trying to get from that person the criteria that's used in reviewing them in state highway right-of-way.
Can I
Regarding
just,
the-
sorry, can I just ask
Yeah.
about the state highway? Did we ever send the letter to our delegation? We did, right? Asking them.
I believe we did. I will
Okay,
double check.
can we just double check? Because I don't
Yeah,
think we ever
sure.
got a response from our delegation
Okay,
requesting, I know they're in session, they're busy, but
I will check.
I'm pretty sure we did send it and we haven't gotten a response.
Okay.
Thanks.
We've been sending lots of letters, so I will double check.
And that also reminds me that there is, and we were going to ask the city attorney to take a look at it, and we were all going to delve a little more deeper, but there is a bill, there are a couple of bills in the state legislature right now that
Yeah.
do relate to cell towers, so that's something we're
Absolutely.
taking a
Yes,
look
they
at.
do. They do.
Mhm.
Just a note too, that regarding our ordinance regarding cell towers, we have solicited proposals from a number of attorneys to assist us with drafting the administrative regulations. We've been receiving some responses, so we should be able to find some, get some feedback to you and some options available to the council soon.
So
Yes, ma'am.
in terms of community notification, is it simply that do they have an opportunity to comment? Or, you know, is there a process in which, I know that this is kind of being developed along the way, but if we are notifying residents and we're really trying to go door to door to make sure that people understand what's happening, I know that there are some residents in that area who would actually be against the cell tower going up. So what recourse would they have, if any?
So there's not an opportunity to make comment to the Tower Committee about their process. They're actually considering adding something like that to their process. We would look at the comments that people received. I think it would be directed to us. You know, I think it's unlikely we would tell Pepco to lower their pole and change their pole again. But I think that we would look seriously at the comments about what does the fixture look like. As everybody knows, we can't comment on radio frequency
Right.
things, which tends to be the area that people have the most concern about. So people can make that comment, but it's not something we can act on. In this case in particular, we have a very limited role, I think. That's part of the reason the notice would be a little bit different, simply because it's so far along. We're not talking, where does the pole go, that kind of thing. So-
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
One other question about, do we have at this point from either State Highway or the Tower Commission an approximation of the number of pending applications for installations on private property or an SHA right-of-way, understanding that they would have to be able and willing to tell us, but do we know? Do we have any idea?
We have gotten it a couple times. I don't know the most recent numbers, but we'll pass that along. And that's part of the
10,
reason.
100,
That's
1,000?
I think it's in the 100-ish range, but I will say that in the conversations on the phone calls I had today, part of the discussion was that we're special. We're getting quite a few of these, partly because we're an older community and we have aerial lines. We don't have buried utilities. And so, so we get a disproportionate number of the applications. Part of the reason I think that it's important that we're on the Tower Commission is that we're able to at least learn about all of these things in a very early state and be able to share that information. How much we have to be able to handle that, I don't know that we'll have a lot to deal with it at first, but as laws may change, then we'll be more apt to be on top of it.
And so we've requested to be on the Tower Commission, and they have agreed in principle or not?
My understanding is that the chief, the CIO of the county has authority to appoint people to this if he so chooses, and he is being encouraged to do so. He said he would be getting back to us.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things that was interesting was the question, if you ask, if a there's only 10 members on it, if you ask a municipality rep to be on the committee, does every other municipality want to be on, and what is that role? As part of that discussion, it was clear though, and I tried to make it clear, that because Tacoma Park is one of the larger communities that also is under the county zoning, that is a primary reason that we should be involved. Also, that the issues that have come up recently have been that the questions about where's the boundary, where's the boundary of the city and the county, which we're very familiar with, and that we have hills, older community, tree laws, a variety of things that make us unique. The CIO was not familiar with Tacoma Park, but his staff was very familiar and was urging him to have somebody from us on there because of our unique situation. Thanks for the update. One of the things that was mentioned at the roundtable with the senior leadership team, and what I think in an email to you today, is a great new program on the low to moderate income energy efficiency grants available. This is a marvelous opportunity for people. For homeowners who are low to moderate income, they can receive free insulation, caulking and draft reduction, appliances including refrigerator, washing machine, water heater, clothes washer, heating and cooling equipment, and some assistance perhaps for solar panels. This would be funded through a grant from the state. Those items that the state doesn't fund, we have funds available through our grant program to assist. Please share this information with those who may be qualified for this. We have some information on our website. We've got application forms. My understanding is the application form is not that helpful, so we're working really carefully to get it designed and in other languages, and to help, and in any event, we'll help walk people through it. So I think it's the other thing that's very nice is it's being managed by a nonprofit, so we don't have to do the work. Other than making sure that we can get the folks to fill out the application, it's a really nice partnership that we're involved in on this program. So please share that information.
And the income guidelines are at this link?
I believe they are.
Great.
They're the same guidelines that qualify for many kinds of programs, so often people will know if they're kind of in that category. But if anybody has a question, our staff will help them. Very briefly, today was National Net Crossing Guard Appreciation Day. Apparently there's also this is the first year that there was a National Crossing Guard Day. There's a different Crossing Guard Appreciation Day. I think it's in June or early June. But in any event, we're always thrilled with our crossing guards. Chief Duvall reminded us that Doris Rogers helped him cross the street when he was a kid. She still works with the city, so that was nice. Also, we got a nice kudo for police officers Butler, Mueller, and Glushkov, who were recently commended by a representative of Boy Scout Troop 33 for their role in organizing and participating in a merit badge event for the boys. And this was one of these situations where they would do it, but because of a couple little unforeseen things, more people jumped in and helped out, and it made it really successful. So I appreciate the officers for always stepping up and helping our young people. Thank you.
Terrific. All right, now we will move on to our work session, which is a report out on our council retreats. I think I'll just say that we held, as we do pretty much every year for the last few years, had 2 evenings of council retreats. They were on January 24th and February 5th. At the council retreat, we discuss priorities that we then later affirm by resolution. These priorities help us as we do our work, and particularly when we are discussing our budget in the spring. This year, thanks to Councilmember Smith, we had our 2 meetings facilitated by 2 researchers and experts in the racial equity field. And so we talked about our racial equity work as we discussed our different priorities. Moving forward, just to give people a sense of the schedule, we will have a work session on the priorities coming up in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be voting on them. As we went through the priorities, the document is attached and on the city website. People can review it. We discussed prioritizing the priorities, I guess, and looked at tentatively 4 that rose to the top. They include ensuring we have a range of safe, quality, and stable housing options that are affordable for residents of varying incomes and of all races and ethnicities. The second, are not necessarily in order, but planning and preparing for development in the city and region while maintaining the special character and diversity of Tacoma Park. Another one was prioritizing actions, policies, innovations, and new opportunities that mitigate and adapt to the causes and effects of climate change. Improve and formalize systems for council-appointed committees, and improving policies and processes, particularly those related to the tree ordinance and traffic, to make them more equitable and easy to understand and follow. So as we went through our exercise of saying what are the things that we really want to think about and prioritize in the upcoming years, these 5 rose to the top. In addition, we had conversations making some changes to the priorities document over adding things like helping residents who live in condominiums when we're looking at our housing issues, or bumping up into one of the main priority areas, work on the New Hampshire Avenue Rec Center. So there were items like that. As we've noted tonight, we had a meeting prior to this meeting with all the department heads in the city to talk about the work that they're doing and challenges that they're facing, so that can inform as we're discussing the priorities moving forward. So I don't know if other the city staff or members of the council had other things they wanted to raise at this moment. I would encourage residents to take a look at it before we come back in the city council and discuss this. We also will be kind of discussing what the budget implications are for all of these, because we know there are a lot of things we like to do, and we need to also remember that they cost things and think about the tax implications of all of it. So I don't know if anyone else has any other, if I missed anything, any other comments this evening? Councilwoman DeBala?
Yeah, so if we have specific editing comments, we should get them
You could say them
around
tonight, or
before
you could.
the work session, or? Okay.
I think ideally, as we discussed, having them sooner. I would like to spend our work session as much as we can on looking at talking about the budget and moving the priorities forward. And if there are slight word changes, to not spend our time talking about, the or it here or there, but get those changes in sooner. So if you want to raise something tonight.
Well, I seem to have 2 different versions of it, but give me a minute. Somebody
Councilmember
else-
Siemens, did you want to?
Uh,
Something else to say?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment that I really appreciate my colleagues. I've watched this process grow from the beginning of doing these priorities, and I'm really struck by the quality of the work this year. Not that it was poor in the past, but I think it's a step up again this year. And I just compliment my colleagues on that. And I also wanted to again express my appreciation to the city manager and all the department heads for the session that we had this evening. It was really heartwarming to see the quality of the management that we have in the city and the thoughtful work that they put in addressing the priorities that we had laid out for this coming year, and also the challenges that we face in addressing those. So again, thank you.
Councilmember Costick?
I wanted to reiterate the thanks for the session that we just had and the opportunity to hear from the department heads and learn a little bit more in the weeds in some cases on things that they're doing. It struck me that it might be useful in future years to have that meeting before our priorities retreats, just so that we had a sense of what's actually going on and what their workload is as we're kind of discussing new projects or new things. So that might be something we can think about in the
Good idea.
future.
Great. I was actually thinking, if it wasn't too much on the staff, the way we did it tonight before the meeting, thinking about having it twice a year would also be, again, realizing there's preparation that goes into having those meetings, and I know many of them probably spent, if you speak for 3 minutes, you probably spent 3
days
hours, right, to, actually speak for 3 minutes, but I do think having maybe more time to do those check-ins would be nice.
I actually don't think it took a lot of time for our staff because they know this stuff off the
Yeah.
top of their head. There were a couple folks, the 3 HCD managers, necessarily worked a little bit together because they kind of got thrown into this quickly. But I don't think it takes a lot of preparation time, and I think they find it valuable. As I mentioned, Mayor, just afterwards, one of the things that they would find valuable is to hear from you all. Because one of the things that is, just as I think you like hearing from them and hearing their voice and whatever, it's helpful to hear your individual voices about the kind of concerns or thoughts or suggestions or things that excite you. And it helps them think better about how to approach some things or to know who to talk with.
The other thing while we're on that topic is, and we were talking about the challenges of staffing, so I'm not asking for more work here, but I would love to tell those stories that we heard in the room a little more to residents and just get it out there. So if there are opportunities, I loved the spotlight that you did on the finance department, like those sorts of things, or if the new communications manager can tweet out things about what's going on, or just get those stories out there. I think that would be really useful.
Great. Councilman Searcy.
So I just want to thank my colleagues and city staff. Not only was the meeting today extremely beneficial, but I like to say our priority discussions were somewhat therapeutic. It was nice to have a space in which we could really be open and honest about what it is that we want to accomplish, what are some of the challenges that we're facing as a city, what are some ways in which we can truly, one, recognize inequities in the city, and how we could try to close those gaps in terms of some of the processes and priorities that we've previously held. And I think one thing that is going to become even more important, especially as we start to talk through the budget and how we're paying for things. I like to say that there's really no such thing as winners and losers when you're talking about improving a city. But in order for us to get to the point where we truly are prioritizing the areas that we've called out and agreed upon somewhat as a council, it might mean that other things that not only our colleagues would I think are important, but many of our constituents may think are important. We might not be able to devote as many resources towards them in the future, or at least for the upcoming fiscal year. So I think that's, it was a nice pregame to kind of have some time to sit and talk about priorities, but the real challenge is going to be, as the mayor mentioned, when we start to actually try to put dollars and staff time to these priorities, which in many cases are huge. I'm so excited that we've bumped up the recreation center as a priority. That's a priority for me, but it's it's a big development project, which means that it's gonna take some time, it's gonna take resources, it's gonna take a lot of effort. So I definitely, again, want to reiterate my appreciation of my colleagues and reiterate my appreciation of staff, and look forward to engaging not just staff and colleagues, but also the city as we start to really talk about these priorities. I would love to have, when we're talking about the budget, the room full of people talking about the priorities and understanding the trade-offs that may be at play, and everyone kind of coming to an agreement on, yes, you know, I may want XYZ tomorrow, but actually we do need to prioritize this particular effort. And no, we are not limitless in terms of our budget. There are certain things we're not gonna be able to do. So whatever we could do to try to engage the community now so that they're invested in some of these discussions going forward would be really beneficial. And again, kind of piggybacking off of Councilmember Cossic's, like, I don't know if we need to just make budget fun. I don't know if that's possible. By making sure that when we're having discussions, that they're, you know, kind of tailored to what people really want to hear versus just us walking through line items. Maybe it's, let's talk about housing and economic development and budget projects that may be aligned to that and priorities, instead of making people drawn on through the entire budget. But anything that we can do to try to make it a little bit more palatable to people so that they can be a part of those discussions, I think is going to be really important. Thank you.
Councilmember Kovar.
Thank you. And just following up on what Councilmember Searcy was just talking about, I think the crucial point for that will be when we're in the budget, and I think I said this before, if I think of a great idea that seems like it would be something that would be a good priority to include in the budget, it's really helpful. It will be helpful to say, okay, this is what that will mean in terms of staff and budgeting. And then we can decide at the time if it's something that, you know, I decide still makes sense to push, that's fine, but at least we'd have that understanding, because if we suggest something and it just gets included in the budget, just human nature being what it is, I'm probably not going to say that thing that I asked for that's in the budget, take it out. It would just be much easier. It would be much easier to know in advance. So I think that's a big part of it. There were a couple of things that I think I mentioned in an email that I'd like to just see what my colleagues thought about adding them. And there's a couple of different versions here, so I think I have the most current version. But one of the things that struck me, and I had mentioned this meeting at last week's council meeting, and the mayor was there, and the chief of police was there, and that was the Old Town Business Association cross-jurisdictional meeting where we had a number of people, both from the city and from the District of Columbia. And so in the section of our priorities list where we talk about working with the legislators and people from other levels of government in Annapolis and Rockville, I was thinking it would make sense to add, this is on the bottom of page 6 in the version of this that I have anyway, to add the District of Columbia there too. The chief mentioned in the earlier meeting that we had today that folks made reference to the memorandum of understanding with the DC Police Force, but I think there are other issues that we talked about, not just crime and law enforcement, but parking and traffic and joint business activity and so on. And so to me, in addition to having Rockville and Annapolis, having Washington DC there as well, and I said in the email, and I defer to others, but perhaps we'd want to add Prince George's County as well. So that would be a modest modification to the bottom box in the center of page 6. And I don't know whether others would have any reaction to that. So that's one that I would put out there. Two other things I just wanted to mention. We talked earlier in the council comment period, I started talking about, and then the mayor added the new format that we were going to try out for the meeting on February 27th, where we're having the PEFCO presentation. And we've talked several times about alternative mechanisms for members of the public, residents, to interact with us. And I thought that was one that was important enough that also in the same page, on page 6, where we talk about improving communications with residents, especially two-way online and social media communications, we could add as a priority also exploring alternative approaches to the public comment process that we currently have. I don't have any objections per se to the existing public comment process, but I think that adding to it is something at least worth exploring. And I'm not saying this would be in the top 4 or 5 priorities for the year that we're identifying, but something that as we went along, we would try out occasionally. So that's another thing that I would suggest. I have a few
Could you-
minor tweaks to the others, but that's something I would suggest, yeah.
Councilmember Kovar, instead of specifically saying public comment, because I think it could be
Yeah.
broader than that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think because we just went through the procedures and accepted that document, like, public comment means something when we talk about specifically. And so instead, maybe talking about
Public engagement.
public,
maybe.
exploring
Yeah, yeah,
different forms of public engagement, just so that we don't tie our own hands or have any misunderstandings with members of the
I
public.
wasn't really meaning it when I said it,
Yeah.
but thank you for clarifying that, right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Along those lines, we had talked about it in the meeting, and I think it didn't quite make it into this draft, that this past year, we've done a great job at improving communications online and social media. We're looking, I thought we were gonna add something in here about engaging a wide range of different types of residents, targeting, if you will, communications to different groups that have historically not participated as much. It came up again in the group discussion at 6 o'clock, and I can come up with some words. Maybe Peter can help, but I think that was something we agreed on that we wanted to get into this section. While I have the floor, the table, the mic, I want to point out for residents that one change that we are making is to substitute the Green Team's priority setting on climate change for what had been in the environmental section. Just so folks know that, and to make the point which they made and which the language makes, that we all know this is a pretty urgent climate situation and it deserves our full attention.
Great.
Well, can I just ask, are we talking about having a formal statement of a climate emergency? We had talked about that. I think that's something that I would support doing as a way of framing the work that we're going to do. I'm not sure if that's what you were suggesting.
Well, I was taking it one step at a time, but I would
Okay.
like to propose at a future meeting some language on a resolution that would state that more forcefully.
And that is the recommendation from the Committee on the Environment.
Yes, that's
We-
another recommendation from them, that we declare that loud and clear.
Yes. So coming to you, stay tuned this spring,
As soon as I
and
get
to
on
come
the
apart,
computer.
resolution on climate emergency. Anything else? So I think we could make some of those line items. I'm looking at the deputy city manager because he has the latest version that I worked on. And it will be posted before the work session, so members of the public can see it. I was also going to ask our city clerk, I thought sending an email and a note to all our committee members, just as an FYI, since we
idea.
did meet with our committee on the environment. We always have this goal of wanting to meet with all our committees, but scheduling, it becomes a struggle. But I think even just sending them a note, reminding them that the even just the cover sheet and maybe the red line version that we have, and saying if they would, and giving them the schedule, and if they'd like to weigh in at all.
I think it's
Yeah.
possible that the rec committee might have something to say, particularly now that which I think is great, that we've bumped up the rec center development as a priority.
Yeah.
And if we have minor, just tweaks, not whole new concepts,
Yeah,
word
yeah.
changes like you
Yeah,
were
yeah,
saying,
just a
we're
email
just sending
them.
those in to?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
To-
if I
to
can,
Jason's
so if we
attention,
can
or-
talk a little bit about staff capacity here.
Oh.
The deputy city manager's off next
Okay.
week.
Oh, right,
So
yes.
if you have, and this is his baby, apparently. And we're very thin, obviously, in terms of who does these things. I would
You
love
can
to-
send it to me, because I
No,
started the
But
document with the.
I think it's fine for him to do
Yeah.
it. I just, if you're going to make these small changes or
Yeah.
these other changes, very soon is more
Yeah.
useful.
Just a note, I've actually made, we corresponded about a couple of these things, and the version that we printed out, we didn't want to kill more trees, so I didn't print out the latest iteration, but it captures all of what we've discussed tonight, except for the exploring alternative approaches to public engagement, because I thought you guys would want to talk that out a little bit more. However, I'm going to propose when I make some edits to that specific goal and strategy, that I make it a little bit more broad than it currently is to capture those interests. But I'm noticing that the strategy specifically states that will develop innovative graphic representations of key issues to help communicate key issues. And I think what we really want to say is developing innovative ways to communicate about key issues to residents and policymakers. In the area, Rockville, Annapolis, DC, and Prince George's County, and I'll come up with some language that you all can do whatever you want with about two-way engagement with residents and public engagement with traditionally harder to reach residents.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we will call it an evening then. And I think we're done. I just want to ask, the D20 evening in Annapolis is Monday night. Are
Right.
folks going?
So we
You're gonna go,
actually, there's the city, there will be a city bus being, that people can sign up on, I think, through the District 20 offices. So some of the messages are going out. If for some reason somebody's not sure who to contact, they can contact me and I'll make sure that they get connected. The location for pickup is at the Tacoma Junction lot, parking lot. If there is some other location that is needed for seniors or something else, I've encouraged that communication to be made to the District 20 office, and then we'll work with them to try to coordinate that, because we're trying to be helpful. I think it's like in 4:15, 4:30-ish time.
But any resident can go on that bus if they want?
Yes, the idea is that it's open for residents who want to go and talk to the District 20 delegation. It is not it is not something that is for a particular political point or anything. So we are, although the D20 delegation is paying for the driver, we're partnering with them to make sure that people can get there.
Great. All right. We are adjourned.
Now she's gone from me, moved away from the old neighborhood, and I'm certain she's gone for good. Last time I saw Jimmy, the dollar sign stood in between. It was love lost to the rising crosses. Since then I have never seen, I haven't seen Janine short of green. Bye-bye, Janine. She was so mean, I mean Janine. She split the sea. So long, goodbye,
Born like thunder in a broken down bed in the winter of '48. Learned to tell a king from an ace long before it was too late. Hit the road when a kid at 12, lost an eye at the age of 19. To a mountain of a man in a barroom brawl, and the say left a little more mean. Beware John Killinger, he's bringing his love to town. Beware Johnny Killinger, he's bringing his love around. They say he traveled throughout the West, he wasn't known to work very much. And the women all knew him everywhere, and they trembled at the thought of his touch. And all the men in the tank town bars didn't take a kindly to him, but hardly one ever said a word, they just stared through the lights down dim. Beware John Killinger, he's bringing his love to town. Beware Johnny Killinger, he's bringing his love around. He wasn't known to have a good friend except for Montana Slim, and they'd meet in a town way up that way when the northwest winds blew in. And they'd drink for a month without a break. People feared they were deranged. They'd leave as quickly as they could, say goodbye till the weather did change. Beware John Killinger, he's bringing his love to town. Beware Johnny Killinger, he's bringing his love around. He sings to the stars, howls at the moon, prays for those in his way. He lives when he can, he'll die when he must, have leaves cause he's better off that way. Ain't got no wife, ain't got no kids, ain't got no crazy little home, ain't got no blood, ain't got no reason ever not wanna be alone. Beware John Killinger, he's bringing his love to town. Beware Johnny Killinger, he's bringing his love around. Beware John Killinger, he's bringing his love to town. Beware Johnny Killinger, he's bringing his love around.
Ready, set, and begin.
are where we saw ourselves to be. Another hour, then a day, I couldn't stop another week. I do it, hold on to a dream I never held on to so long. Live a life with you and chasing all of wrong. Yeah, no matter if we win or do, yeah, you got to choose. Where you can't take my hold, you can't make it go away. That's enough your word, that's the wisdom of the day. Well, I know what it is that I must do, girl. Just have to dream much once inside of you. Yes, there ain't no life, girl, I know. But I can't abide what you've been sold. There's more to life than doing what your mama told you to do. And a dream was once inside of you. Sometime I wanna start over, and I'm young for another time. Sure to make that change and find that peace of mind. Where no one understands me, I guess that means you too, girl. Just let a dream was once inside of you. Don't want no one to own me. Anything, just a state of mind. Show your words of wisdom ain't worth a dime. Where no one understands me, I guess that means you too, girl. Just let the dream was once inside you. Can't live life long without soul. Can't blow your horn without making a sound. Can't get by on what's your told, girl. And I just want to make you love and just lay it down. Ain't no life, girl, I know, yeah. I can't divide what you've been stolen, honey. There's more to life than moving. What's your mama told you to? Gotta do to get some. Did a dream was once inside of you. Inside of you, daughter, baby.
The clan dispersing, the clan land sold, Kirk burial denied. Patrick McComey instructs his nephew, Rob. Dig well this plot, where I would lie beneath the green-tongued rowan tree. There let me dream the seasons past, as her red berries bleed with my soul's blood. Let her breathing roots feed deep, till bone and sinew rise in shining green. Let my seer's sight rejoin her quickening seeds, my spells the voices in her speaking leaves. There you may call me back when you have need.
young Aladdin plays in bars. There's magic in the boy's guitar, and everyone draws near when young Aladdin's name appears. And once a girl, both sure and kind, she liked his style, she liked him fine, but anyone can see what he needs is to be free. Just a boy with an old guitar, and in the sky a lucky star. He likes to play, he has a dream, you see. Happiness is everything. So he let her love and he let her go. He sometimes hopes that she will come back home, but anyone can see that music is his family. He's up, he's down, he's warm, he's cold. He sings his songs, he bears his soul, and everyone draws near when young Aladdin's name appears. Just a boy with an old guitar, and in the sky a lucky star. He likes to play, he has a dream, you see. Happiness is everything. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. His day will come, he knows it's true. His lamp is real, his touch is new, and everyone draws near when young Aladdin's name appears. And everyone draws near when young Aladdin's name appears. Evil intention on a Baltimore night. A young street dealer gonna finish this fight. A Molotov cocktail cuts the air. Angela's house is burning. 7 young lives asleep inside. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. 21 years back, a dealer was born. A beautiful baby, an innocent boy. He learned a code on Baltimore streets. Every day made him better. He pushed his crack and
Unchain the streets from end to end, lead the people home again. Moses and Lincoln, Dawson and King, prophets and martyrs, mysterious things. Slavery comes in nickel bags, choking hope and freedom. Nothing is promised in this life. Know what's good and do what's right.
Well, I like to go out and run around and spend all night out on the town. Me and my buds, we just get up and go and have some honky-tonkin' fun, and then go back home to my home. Now I can't believe she wants to let me go. Well, I know my edges ain't real smooth, and I drink until I cannot move, but it ain't like I'm something she don't know. We gone and laid down these here roots, so why she want her walking boots? I can't believe she wants to let me go. Now this her heart's a breaking, 'cause she ain't here with me. I remember way back in the day when she liked my company. I sit all day and watch TV. I'm still the same old me. I can't believe she wants to let me go. Now this old heart's a breaking, 'cause she ain't by my side. I remember way back in the day when she was satisfied. I sit all day and drink my beer. I'm the same old sitting here. I can't believe she wants to let me go. No, I can't believe she wants to let me go.
We're gonna have a supper. We'll eat some food that's rare. And at the head of the table, we'll place Brother Henry's chair. Invite all our local big dogs. Laugh and talk and eat. I will save the bone for Henry Jones, 'cause Henry don't eat no beef. They're going down to the market and buy up a lot of fish. Yeah, that ought to please Brother Henry. His fish is his long special dish. I get a great big can of molasses just to have a little something sweet. and we'll save bones to Henry Jones, 'cause Henry don't eat no meat. Yeah, Henry not a drinker, hardly takes a nip. He don't use no napkin, I got the things he eats don't drip. One day we had a banquet, it really was a big. Started out eating short ribs, and we finished up on the egg steak. He said the chops were mellow, he said his chops were beat. And we'll save the bone for Henry Jones, if Henry don't eat no meat. Henry's just not no drinker, hardly takes a nip. He don't need no napkin, the things that he eats, they don't drip. Blip, drink with words most proper, right down again at time. Soda, lox, and bagels, even Hello Fresh at the glass. And when the feast was all over, Brother Henry just kept his seat. And we'll save the bone for Henry Jones, 'cause Henry don't eat no meat. And Henry don't eat no meat. Lord Henry, Lord is on the phone. It's sure enough that it does set stay the bones. Head on, baby.
Something so evil be so beautiful. How can something so enticing be so wrong for me? I must have gone under a fatal blunder. Despite what I prayed, things turn out that way. How can someone that I trusted turn away or put me down? How can love so beautiful turn my life upside down? I wanna know. I must have gone under a fatal blunder. Despite what you prayed, things turn out that way. apart, fall upon deaf ears. How can all of my love and my joy for you, baby, lead to nothing, nothing but a broken heart? I know what they say. They say you just lost the game. Despite what you pray, things turn out that
Malala, the young girl almost murdered by the Taliban just because she wanted to go to school. Rushing to the metro, already almost late on my way to ballet, I skid on acorns, catch myself. I think of Malala, maybe rushing, never wanting to think her name means grief-stricken, as I'd written a poem about becoming what you're called. Maybe she was humming a song she heard once on TV before the Taliban made that a crime, or was watching October leaves from the bus, or giggling with girlfriends. Maybe she was thinking of becoming a doctor and coming back to treat young children in her region, her SWAT. Or maybe she was hoping to see a certain boy with licorice eyes and a smile who always made her laugh. No longer able to wear school uniforms, told to wear plain clothes, Malala wrote in her blog, "Instead, I decided to wear my favorite pink dress." Maybe the last beautiful thing she saw as the bullet entered her mahogany curls, until later she woke up in the hospital's cone of light.